FanDuel welcomes you to our Wednesday stream for Kentucky Derby 150. Joining us on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate all the comments that are going to be forthcoming, and we encourage you to get involved for Kentucky Derby 150. We're back at the production truck. I got Gabby Gaudet, who's just coming in from hair and makeup, and she looks lovely. You'll get a chance to see that later on today on FanDuel. But let's welcome in my co-host, Geena, Lucille, and Caton Bredar. Caton's with us as we scramble around the FanDuel compound. Good morning. Good afternoon. Well, it's still morning here, 11:04 Eastern time. Good morning. How are the both of you?
I'm great. I'm just happy that I actually could get Wi-Fi and join you in time. But because of all the activity on the backstretch, it's jam-packed. You just don't sleep, right? That's it. You just go.
Yeah, to find Wi-Fi and to get a seat, and it seems like it's kind of cool in there. Scott, Hazelton, you're outside in the elements.
I'm outside. We're right in the heart of the production side of things here, as we'll be going on air in 55 minutes. Gabby, come over here. Say hi to all the viewers. Here's my.
Hi.
Gabby's getting ready.
I'm just trying to get work done, and I brought my own chair.
She's got chairs. She's got snacks. We're just rolling with it this morning here, as we get ready for this Wednesday card. Let's remind you, for you FanDuel Racing customers, to go ahead and get involved with the No Sweat Derby bet, up to $20 back. It's available. Make sure you take advantage of all of the promos this week. There is a bunch of them. So your best opportunity are coming this week for various sign-up offers and other things. So No Sweat Derby bet, up to $20 back for Kentucky Derby 150. Let's get right into the Kentucky Derby. Here's a look at the morning line in field. Sierra Leone, second choice. He draws post position number 2. He'll be the first horse that we take a look at from earlier this morning. And if you missed it, there's a change. Encino, the 9 horse, he's scratched. So the 9 is scratched. As we go to the second part of the field, that's where Fierceness finds himself. He draws post 17. But with the scratch of Encino, Epic Ride draws in from the also eligible. And before we get to Sierra Leone and Mugatu, Caton, does this change things with Society Man drawing off the also eligible for a horse like Fierceness with that speed drawn to his outside?
Well, I mean, it certainly adds a little heat to the fire early, right? And it also, I know in talking to Danny Gargan this morning, he feels like it's a better thing that instead of being outside, he now has a horse outside of him. He felt like that was a benefit for Society Man. I think that it maybe makes it a little bit more challenging for Fearlessly, but the one thing about it, either Fearlessly gets away from the gate cleanly, or he doesn't. And if he does, as he did in his most recent start, then I think then kind of that what's outside of him is immaterial.
Well, let's take a look at Epic Ride galloping from earlier this morning. I mean, this is a horse who ran a huge race. He did so in the Toyota Bluegrass. They took their shot. They tried him on dirt. He's got the pedigree, Geena. He's by Blame, and a horse that he's not going to be talked about as far as amongst the horses that are going to be chosen in this race. I'd be shocked to find many that are going to choose him on top, but I think there's definitely a case to be made for him as a potential top 4 contender for this Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, I mean, to get drawn in late for Epic Ride and be on the outside, he's a big horse. He likes that long distance. You know, I had an interview with John Ennis yesterday before he got in. And of course, he was not wishing any ill will on anybody or not getting in, but he was very happy to have the horse get in. And this horse, I was hoping this horse would get in, to be honest, because I just think it changes a bit of the dynamic of the race and throws in more of a really strong closer. And, you know, John Ennis is a newer trainer coming up and doesn't have a lot of big horses. So to have this horse in here for him makes a huge deal for the Lexington horseman community. And so this is the horse to do it, though. I think this horse is a bit of a wild card thrown in.
Yeah, he's going to impact the race one way or the other, Kate. I mean, that's just the reality of it. With him drawing in with his speed, that outside draw with Fierceness not far away from him. You mentioned Society Man. He's an interesting sword. For those playing big superfecta tickets, I put him in there. I really do.
I agree. I agree completely. And I would add, too, he's a horse. You're always looking for the horses that seem like they're just flourishing at this time of year. It's not always the case for horses raced right along, but he really, really is. When you look at him physically, he looks tremendous.
Well, he's the 21. He's in, but there's one horse who is not. And as Geena mentioned, you're not hoping for these situations to happen, but you've got to be prepared for them up until scratch time for the Derby. And Mugatu is the horse now on the outside looking in. Now he's one off of getting into this field. I mean, just looking at his form, Caton, it looks like an impossible task for him to be a player if in fact he draws into this race. Mugatu, number 22.
Well, I agree that, I mean, it's a tall order, there's no question. And in talking to Jeff Engler, his trainer, this morning, I think he understands that. But at the same time, they felt after the Bluegrass, the way he closed, that he, if given the opportunity to run, might deserve a shot in there. I think that they sort of waited to find out what the status was with some of the other horses who would have been bubble horses. But when he got word from the racing office that no one else was entering besides Epic Ride that was on the outside looking in, he said, you don't, someone like him doesn't get those opportunities. And the horse did finish a fast closing fifth. He's doing well physically. He's another one that's a big striding colt, very laid back, can handle everything mentally and emotionally, feels like. So I think, why not? I don't know that I could put him on my ticket, but I really do respect the horseman and I respect the horse. And I think he ran credibly enough to earn the shot to try, right?
Right. I mean, and that's the thing, Geena. We're going to get into it at the top of the show. I know that Gabby's been crunching the numbers as to how hard it is to make it into the starting gate from 19,000 foals to that 20. So, I mean, that's a win regardless, right? That is a win to be here, and that is why it is the biggest race that we run in North America. Let's go ahead and move on to Sierra Leone as we'll continue to look for some positive comments on YouTube and Facebook. Sierra Leone, just a tremendous looking animal, there's no question about it, and the second choice here.
I love this horse. I was actually with Tyler Gaffleone when he was training this morning, and we were talking about the fact that he just goes out and does the same thing every single day. I mean, he's like clockwork. Big, long striding horse. Not the most remarkable horse as far as that you'd look to, but at the same time, he doesn't do anything wrong ever. He sort of takes things in stride. Tyler describes him as a toddler. He says he's got like all this talent, all this energy, all this, but at the same time, he still doesn't even know that he's reached the bottom of him in his races. But to me, he's starting to be a little bit more focused right before your eyes. And I think if he can take it up just a half a notch off of what his previous races were, it's going to be a tremendous performance. So, I mean, he's positive about the horse. I'm really positive about the horse and have been for a long time.
Yeah, and maybe he's a horse that can feed off the energy of the crowd. I mean, that was the conversation in the Toyota Bluegrass, and obviously that we talked about up until Saturday going into the starting gate. I mean, it's hard not to feed off the energy, and maybe that will get him to for the light bulb to go on, as we say, as far as that early portion of the race. But it's tough to ignore him and the steadiness of his stride and the efficiency of his stride once he gets it into full motion. Just a touch, the number 8 horse, I think that he's a prime one, Geena, that his price is going to come down. He ran a big race in the Toyota Bluegrass as well, but just a touch, I think definitely one that you've got to key in the top 2 or 3 bare minimum for the Derby running.
Yeah, you absolutely have to respect this horse and respect what he's done and who he's run against and who he's been up in the mix with. His running style really suits this race as well, and I believe with his post position, it's really set him up. But this is the Derby; you have to be lucky. But still, I mean, he's run some really awesome.
Caton, he really has run some awesome races, and maybe he was a little bit too close to a somewhat fast pace last time out in the Bluegrass, and that's caught up with him, and maybe he can settle a bit off further to keep himself out of that hot pace or whatever the pace ends up being.
If you're just looking at his past performances, he's the horse that I most fear, and watching him train as well. I think that he's an elegant horse. He's very composed. What I'm think could be his undoing is the fact that Derby stats wise don't favor horses who've only started 3 times going into the Derby. There's only been a couple horses recently that have done it. They were both tremendous. One of them was Justify and one of them was Mage last year. Now, then you have to go way, way back. Some really good horses have tried it and haven't been able to do it. And in fact, only 4 starts going into the Derby is a stretch. You don't get any more winners by doing that, expanding it, because most horses that win the Derby are a bit more seasoned, are a bit more tested. But I do think things have changed quite a bit, which certainly works in favor of it just a touch. And we saw that with Mage last year. So maybe the door opened a crack for him from that regard, and certainly the way he comes into the race. I think the Bluegrass is going to turn out to be as important as the Risen Star was going into the Derby. And I think he's a horse you have to be aware of and respect.
No question about it. Just to touch the 8, 10-1 on the morning line for Brad Cox. Now one of 2 that Brad has with the announcement yesterday that Encino is scratching out of this race. Let's move on to the Derby favorite, Fierceness. He draws post 17. From talking to Todd Pletcher yesterday, I feel like that he's in a good position. He's learned from the years and the very vast number of horses that he's brought over here to the Kentucky Derby to, as he told me, not change things, go into it as you've gotten there with these horses. And Fierceness, he's brilliant at times, and then at times he's not. I mean, my biggest worry for him is, can he overcome adversity if it presents itself in a 19-horse field, which, if you're betting on that solely, absolutely you're betting that there's going to be some sort of adversity in some version in the running of this race.
For me, the reason I'm not willing to just concede the fact that he's a horse that has to have everything his own way. I think he had legitimate excuses in his 2 subpar efforts. So it's not that for me. I think that now he's got a decent outside post position draw that should favor him getting away more cleanly. He's got the speed that's amazing. But I think the question is, will he be able to at least maintain the form we saw at Gulfstream Park in the Florida Derby against a tougher field at a longer distance of ground? Or after an extended period of time where he's shown brilliance and that incredible performance, will he regress? Will he bounce? I don't think it'll be because of obstacles in the race. I just wonder if that was such a big performance that maybe he can't come back and run that same performance again. We talk about the bounce factor. That, for me, he is a potential bounce candidate. The other part of it is, it might be the weather. It could be 100 different things that were just the moment that I was watching him today in particular, but I wonder if he's tailing off just a little bit. He just didn't seem quite as bright as he did earlier. There's nothing wrong with him. I just didn't see quite the spark in his morning training that I did when he first got here. Now, maybe it's just me. And again, the temperature's changed. It's gotten much warmer, and maybe that's all it is. But he is going to be a short price, and that might be enough for me to look elsewhere.
Yeah, that's the puzzle that is the Kentucky Derby. There's so many tempting prices on good horses that it's oftentimes a situation where you're looking to try to beat the favorite, and Fierceness will be the favorite for the Run for the Roses. Let's move on to the Wood Memorial winner, Resilience, for Bill Mott at Colt by Into Mischief. They added blinkers last time out, Geena, and it worked in the Wood Memorial. Best performance by far for this colt, bred by the Y Gods and owned in part by Pam and the late Marty Y Gods' daughter, Emily Bushnell.
You know what I like about this horse is he shows a lot of energy in the morning, but it's controlled energy. And also what I like about this horse is, the fact that he's been on the inside of a post position at 1, and he's also been at 10, and he's run successful out of both. So he's a very versatile horse. And I just like I like the attitude about him. I really do. I really like Resilient. When I see him before he goes on the track, he's just stands there so picturesque with a lot of presence. He holds a lot of presence. He knows that he knows he's the you know, the deal.
We got an interesting comment. I mean, obviously we're focused on these horses, and also the focus is on betting this race. Mike Pietro thinks that Sierra Leone is going to be the favorite. I mean, I don't think that's an absurd comment, Caton, but I still think Fierceness probably goes off as the favorite, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting because I thought that too, that Fierceness would ultimately be the favorite. And I'm told by serious players that he will be the favorite when it's at post time. But there's a lot of support for Sierra Leone for sure. And I think the early wagering right now, which is very, very early relative to where we'll be on Saturday, is with Sierra Leone as favorite. So I think, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see.
Let's go on to the number 5 horse, Catalytic, for Safi Joseph Jr. This is just his fourth start of his career. He talked about Caton, horses with experience versus not. He doesn't have a lot. He took a big jump forward last time out. Granted, in a 9-horse field, finishing second in the Florida Derby. The second looks a lot better than beating 13, but it was Fierceness that beat him. Do you see any reason to think that there's another step forward for him?
It was such a big step forward that I'm not sure. But he's so lightly raced that it is possible. I think the horses that have done less going into this have the potential to continue moving forward, even off of big efforts. You can see him training. He's not the biggest horse. He's not like a massive hulking horse. But he's very athletic looking, and he kind of skips over the racetrack. And, his second was a big improvement. So maybe going to the 1.25 miles would be even more of the same. But I'm not sure he's quick. But I, again, go back to this 3 starts going into the Derby, working against him. Just overall, I just think, you need a bit more of a foundation most of the time.
It looks like an easy horse to get along with, Geena. I mean, he's just out there doing his thing, galloping along at an easy pace.
I think this horse gets over the track out of the top 5 in my list of horses. This horse catches my eye every time I see him. And, I will agree with you. He's not the biggest of horses, but he's a chunk monk. He was a chunk, and now he's really getting muscled in. He's so rideable, and he just glides over this track. And even when we had a lot of rain, he was gliding over it just as well. So he's gonna like a little bit of a wet track, and he's fine with this track as well. And his rider said that he's handling everything so professional. He's a grinder, and I like seeing a horse that can grind down the wire and really run horses down. And he's not shy to do so. So that's very important when you have a horse like that. I like Catalytic a lot.
Dylan Beardy, Dylan says he thinks Just Steel is a 20-1 steal, no pun intended. If Muth was in the Derby, he'd probably be favored. Finished well. We know that's not the case. We're not going to go down that path. But Just the Steal, is he a steal at 20-1? I think he's on my ticket. He's in my superfecta. We play a big superfecta family ticket. Just Steel will be there, Caton.
When I started looking at his numbers, if you go off the Thorograph numbers, for example, he's got a very, very good number that's very competitive in here. He also has the style to not have to be on the lead and yet not have to be from the back of the pack either, which is kind of ideal because you're strategically placed, but at the same time, you don't necessarily get involved in a pace meltdown, which has happened the last couple of years. So I think Just Steel is an interesting long shot for sure.
We just rolled video, and we're going to roll it again into the number 16 horse, Grand Mo the First, for Victor Barboza Jr. To me, he's the biggest long shot in this race. Geena, I can't be on board with a horse that's won twice and both have come in 5 and 5.5 furlongs, and think that he's capable of finishing in the top 4 or 5 going a mile and a quarter.
For sure. You look at what he's done, and you kind of think, well, how did he get here? He's a very big long horse, and he's also very intelligent. I've been to his barn a few times, spoke with his owners, spoke with the trainer, rider, the whole 9 yards. And I think you do with a big field like this, you do need a very smart, sensible horse. He has talent. We just don't know. We just don't know how the race is going to unfold. We do know that this race is going to have a lot of speed. And so it's going to set up for closers like this horse.
I think part of that speed is domestic product. And we had a question about domestic product, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll pull that up, and there it is, thoughts on domestic product. He should be up close, right? I mean, he's got Irad. Irad's not going to keep him out of position, Caton, right? I mean, he comes in off of a 2-month gap, at 30-1 with Irad in the saddle and Chad Brown, and he's a well-bred Klarovich stable colts, and he's run against some of the best in this crop of 3-year-olds. I've seen worse 30-1 shots in the Derby.
Yeah, look, I believe that the barn has had a lot of confidence in him for a while. And the reason that he ended up the route he did was it was the best way for him to earn points to get the shot to try in the Derby. A lot's made of the Tampa Bay Derby not having the depth that a lot of other prep races did, and that you go for the easiest route because you don't have as much confidence in your horse. And I think just the opposite. You go for the easiest route because you have confidence in the horse and you want to make sure he gets in, and he gets there. So he did what he needed to do in the Tampa Derby. I thought that was important. I'm wondering about how close he can be. When you look at the times of his races previously, the early fractions, the internal fractions, he doesn't seem like a horse who, even if he's asked, I just don't know that he can sit close if they go fast. But at the same time, he's very, very steady. He never gives up. So I think that's an asset if there is a very fast pace up front.
Yeah.
With domestic product, I feel that he's been in Sierra Leone's shadow so much, so we don't really get to, hype or think about domestic product. I don't think he's been pushed, right? Because of what you guys are saying with the easier races to get to the Derby and points, which means the horse is going to be super fresh if he's within himself. And I do love to see horses that have had easier races and easier spots getting to the big day, because when horses are like Fierceness running and just blowing through the field, that's a lot on their body for the year. And these are 3-year-olds, so and on any horse really. So I like the fact that domestic product has used a softer spot getting to the Derby, and that's going to help him on Derby day. If he's within himself, he's going to be a fresher horse.
We got a lot of questions coming in. We're going to go to Catching Freedom, the number 4 horse. Thoughts on him, Bobby? Appreciate the positive thoughts and comments here. I mean, he's one of 10 that I say yes is good enough to win. He's gotten better. I think he's surprised Brad Cox on how good he's become. Maybe not the flashiest horse in the mornings, but he knows how to win these races late. He was beat by Sierra Leone on the square and Track Phantom. I think he caught Track Phantom in the Louisiana Derby because Track Phantom necessarily doesn't want to go a mile and 3/16, and obviously that would translate to a mile and a quarter. But he and Sierra Leone, it'd be great to see them find each other at some point in this race and just follow each other. That's how I envision it happening down the backstretch and maybe into the far turn.
And Caton, do you remember when during Churchill Downs, we were watching the Parchment Party race back in November? He was just beaten. It was 2 1/4 lengths behind Parchment Party in that race, and that was a tough race.
I agreed. So I have to say this is one of those horses that I'm not quite sure what to do with. I agree 100%, Scott, that he's one of 10. I mean, even I could pare it down a bit. Maybe if I even went to 6 to 8 horses that I would put as a win possibility. And yet, because of his running style, I am concerned with him coming from the back of the pack, and I don't think you can change it with him. I think this is who he is, and that's how he runs. And no matter what the distance is, he's going to sit back early and come running late. So it's a matter of trip. But the two things that I like about him, he's trained beautifully as far as galloping, maintaining, carrying good weight, hitting the round well. He looks good. He's not flashy in his works. I think that's a sign of intelligence. He saves it for the afternoon. He runs a lot faster in the afternoon than he does in the morning. And he only does it through the lane because why waste the extra energy? I thought he had a legit excuse in the Risen Star with some traffic trouble. I don't know if it made the difference for a win, but I do think it cost him. And he's improved on his buyer speed figures with every one of his lifetime starts. And that ideally is what you want coming into the Derby. So a lot of pluses for him.
This is an interactive show. We are running out of time because we've got racing to cover at the top of the hour at noon Eastern. I'm not sure if we're going to get to the Kentucky Oaks here on this stream, but I want to field these questions because, as I said, this is what it's all about. And Sixer on YouTube wants to know, Caton, can Endlessly, the Jeff Ruby Stakes winner, move on this dirt or not based on what you've seen? My initial impressions, I don't think that Michael McCarthy would have him here if he didn't think that he was good enough to handle this group.
That's what I believe. So on the plus side, he has improved from his first work to his second work. He looked better. He looked more comfortable. When he trains in the morning, he looks really good. I really think he's the type of horse, though, he tries hard no matter what. But when you push the button on him to ask him for what you need at the top of the stretch, I don't think he can give you what he can give you on the turf. So for me, he's a no in this spot. But he also, just on talent, could arguably be one of the most talented horses in the race. I just don't know that this is his surface or his game.
Joe Hu on YouTube, his question is, how long have the Japanese runners been on the grounds getting acclimated? Joe, I'm not sure of that. Do we have that information? I mean, there's obviously a quarantine period in coming here. They've been out on the track, so they've cleared quarantine. And these horses, they travel a lot, so I'm not worried about travel and acclimation because looking at Forever Young, Saudi, Dubai, America, I mean, these are well-traveled animals.
So short answer is that T.O. Password hasn't been here for very long. He got in, I think it was Thursday, where he arrived from Chicago quarantine. After he cleared quarantine, he flew from Japan, ended up in Chicago, went through quarantine there. Then on Thursday, arrived at Churchill Downs. And then he goes into what's called isolation, meaning isolated from the other horses, but he can come out and train and run. And he has only had a few days on the track, really, but he had a breeze that I thought was a very good work on Tuesday. And I'm just going to tell you, I respect both horses. Forever Young has been here longer, much longer, and has had several works over the track. Both are doing well. Both work differently than each other and the way they do it here versus the way in Japan. But of the two, I like the bigger price. I know he's a long shot. I know he's like 1,000,000 to 1 on every place you look, but I like T.O. Password a little to hit the board.
I do too. He's a pace factor. He worked at 46 and change in company. That was a good workout yesterday morning. One more question, maybe a couple more before we have to wrap things up. Stronghold, a Santa Anita Derby winner, Sunland Derby winner. He's got speed. He's a Grade 1 winner. Maybe I'm not sure that his numbers quite stack up, Caton, with a lot of these horses, but Santa Anita Derby winner with speed and an outside draw. What are your thoughts on him for Phil D'Amato?
I don't think he's run fast enough. I think he will have to improve for sure. But it's interesting because he has the right style for me. He'll be tactical. He'll be in that first tier of horses, and he's run very well against some of the best when you look back, and owns a win over the Churchill Downs track, which I think is important.
Jacob Danny, Geena, wanting to know with the scratch of Encino, how does that affect the pace? I think it's the same because you draw an Epic Ride who's got speed, so I don't think it affects it very much. I think it's very much the same way that you would have handicapped it if Encino was still in this race.
Absolutely, and especially with this is the Derby, so we're going to have a massive field. There's so many contenders in here with speed and coming from the back. It's going to be the same. I don't think he was really going to be one of those horses that are going to be rushing to the front, trying to do a crazy pace.
We have to cover some live racing, Caton and Geena. We've got racing coming up here at Churchill. This has been a busy stream. We appreciate all the questions and comments. We'll be back again tomorrow here on YouTube and Facebook, so get involved in the conversation starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Big shout out to Neil Marson. Great to have you on the show. And don't forget about the No Sweat Derby bet up to $20 back. Make sure you take advantage of this for Derby 150 and let's hope that we are making it rain come 8 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. For Caton, for Geena, I'm Scott from the FanDuel TV compound. We're going to be getting off the air here on the stream and coming live. Christina's streaming me here on a different device. I don't know what's going on. Come in here, Christina. Here's Christina.
Hi, I just got here.
I don't know if she can hear in my AirPod, but we are getting set for some racing coverage. Appreciate all the questions this morning. To Mike, to Joe, to Sixer, to Jacob. Have a great Wednesday. Join us over on FanDuel for some great racing